this might be a little too honest, but like get over yourself already. Like there's so much business out there. People are buying and selling houses every day, all day. This hasn't been the hardest couple of years ever. And even if this was hard for rates, other years were hard for other reasons. Something will always be
1000%.
hard. Stop complaining. We have the best job in the entire world. If you're in this job and you can't wake up every day and be like, holy cow, I'm a loan officer, you probably should find a different job.
Welcome to another episode of the Made to Be Great podcast, where we have conversations that spark growth. Today, I'm joined here with Melanie French from my team at Fairway Mortgage. Thanks so much for joining today, Melanie. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So tell the listeners how you got into the mortgage business, just back to the beginning, a little bit about your background. And because most of us don't set out as young children or high school students thinking about getting in the mortgage business. So tell us a little bit about that journey and what brought you here.
Yeah, happy to. I definitely found the mortgage industry on accident. Back before COVID, I worked for the world's largest retailer in their corporate department. And, you know, COVID kind of changed the way we do everything with business.
Right.
Also, you know, right around that same time, right smack dab in the middle of COVID, I had a baby, a very fragile premature baby. And so, you know, not only did COVID change the way we were working and doing business, but my household dynamic changed dramatically. It didn't really feel feasible to go back to the, 60, 70 hours in office that I was working prior to having my sweet little boy. So, right after that, I had a little bit of tragedy in my life. My husband and I got divorced. I had this new little tiny baby. I had decided to leave my job in corporate America because I couldn't put my kid in daycare and feel comfortable, with how fragile he was. And so, I found myself kind of standing in my living room, looking around, like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to balance this new way that everybody's working, the pressures and demands of keeping your kids healthy, a brand new baby, all by myself. And so I started to get creative. It's funny. I actually saw some ads about this time too for mortgage lending positions because, this was right at like the refi boom that everybody had, but rates were low. So there was just ad after ad after ad. And I remember thinking like, ugh, who would want that job? Which is funny. So I never even looked into it, but I saw a woman on one of, like a Facebook group dedicated to moms in the area.
So that was around 2020 or 2021?
Yeah, about the end of 2020.
2020. Okay. So for context to people who might be unaware or not remember, I'm trying to think back. 2020 and 2021, probably like second quarter 2020 and on, all the way through the end of 2021 was like record mortgage volume production. So just for context of people listening to this maybe later.
Yeah. So there was just a lot of jobs in this industry at that point in time, but had no interest at all. But I saw a woman on Facebook looking for like a marketing assistant in her mortgage office. And it was very flexible. She was a mom herself. She knew what pressures, young single moms go through. And so I thought that it was a good culture fit. And then I could just like fake it till I make it with the rest, So I got this job doing marketing, and was horrible at it. It was just really, really bad. Turns out I'm not very good at marketing.
So how are you feeling at this point?
Well, for the first like month, I didn't know I wasn't very good at it. And so I was pretty excited. I was making all these like real fun graphics and bubble font that turns out is no longer a thing past like fifth grade, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I thought I was doing really well. And then I started releasing some of these things I'd created to our sphere of influence, and the feedback I got was brutal. Like it wasn't kind feedback, even.
Wow.
It was just, it was hard. And so, I had this realization then that like, I'm not good at this. I can't go back to what I was doing before. All of my skill sets had been in one industry up until this point, and I couldn't really figure out how they relayed to a new position and a new job at a new industry. And so, it was scary. I felt a little bit deflated,
Mm,
but really more like afraid for my kids and for our future. And how am I going to rebuild my life, if I don't have a good job? But how am I going to have a good job if I've got these pressures and demands from, my household? And then also I can't figure out where my skills plug in.
mm. So now you're before the mortgage industry, when you were at this other giant retailer, you were doing pretty well in your career at that point. You were doing um, did you say 70 or 80 hours a week of
Yeah, I was working a lot, a
so
lot.
you're working a lot. You find yourself at home with COVID, newly divorced, new baby, and you try this marketing job for a mortgage group, not going, the feedback isn't good. And so that had to feel incredibly just overwhelming, frustrating, scary. And so I'm sure a lot of listeners will be able to relate to that and have maybe felt in a similar situation before, and or maybe are in one right now that feels kind of hopeless. And so, knowing the future, which our viewers don't know yet, um, I think the rest of the story that you have to share will encourage a lot of people. So let's fast forward to the next step. So the marketing thing is getting bad feedback, not going well. Then what happens next?
Well, I think that the hardest part was that little transition between this marketing and the next piece because
Mm,
post divorce, post leaving my career, post starting over, your confidence is not the greatest. Even it's just, when all these bad things just pile on, it's easy to start thinking, like, what did I contribute and where did I fail and where were my missed opportunities? And so when that wasn't working out, my confidence, I felt like, was at an all time low. But I'm looking around simultaneously to that, to the women in this office that I'm working at that are loan officers, and they are like superstars. Like they're doing super fun work. And what I
mm,
call fun work would be solving problems and talking to clients and helping people achieve like this huge dream. I mean, I remember how excited I was when I bought my first house. It was something I thought I would never get to do, and it completely changed my life. And so they're like doing this every day, helping people, fixing complex problems, and they're doing it in a way that still allows them to be parents to their kids, that allows them to give back to the community. It was inspiring. And so I was not happy, low confidence, watching these rock stars out here doing a job that I think I could do this. But it took this huge step of saying, like, I almost had to say, like, I know that right now it feels like I can't do this, but I want it bad enough that I got to do it anyway. And like
mm,
that was a hard step. It was a hard step. And I wish I could explain it a little bit better. But it was like a choice. One day I came in and I said, if I want this kind of life, if I want to do this kind of job, I'm just going to have to kind of step off the ledge a little bit. So I came into the office and I told my manager, I was like, listen, we both know I'm terrible at this marketing job. Let's hire somebody else. And I think I'm going to go get licensed and I'm going to originate loans. Can I do it here? And she was
mm,
kind of taken aback. And I think maybe a lot of people say things like that and maybe don't follow through. I don't know, because she was even more taken aback when I came in the next day and I was like, "Hey, I signed up for classes."
I'm actually doing this.
Yeah, I'm doing it. I don't know what to say. I'm gonna do it and figure it out. So it turned out well. I ended up licensed and started originating loans real quickly after that.
So it was not from a place of supreme confidence or
Not at
uh,
all.
anything like that. You were in a situation where you just made a decision. I'm just trying to paraphrase for the viewers and listeners. So you just made a decision and you took a leap, which surprised your then manager because a lot of people say a lot of things, but you just made the leap and did it.
Well, because I kind of figured, like, if this isn't working out as it is, and I don't do anything, like that equals failure, right? Like I'm gonna fall on my face and fail. So I could try this, and worst case, I also fall on my face and fail. But best case, this is a good fit for me, and this is how I start establishing my future.
Hmm. So what do you think caused you to be able to do that?
Hmm. Well, I think that I had to remind myself that, like, I'm not just like things.
Mm,
A lot of our self-talk, I think, especially when we are kind of in that down and out place where I had found myself, can be like, I'm terrible at this marketing job. I couldn't make this graphic. They thought it was childish, whatever, right? You could just keep saying all these negative things to yourself. And I had to kind of stand in the mirror and like snap out of it and remind myself, like, I had a successful career before this. Um, I produced something major for the company I worked in that went on to change the way they did customer care. I have raised beautiful, wonderful children, and I just had to kind of keep going through the things that I've managed to achieve, and remind myself, like, I don't just suck at stuff. This is just a bad fit. And I think that kind of propelled me to be able to take the leap.
that's really wise. I think, keeping a record, whether it's mental in a notepad, on a board in your office, or on just a wall somewhere, to keep a record of the wins that you've had and the successes that you've had. I think, to your point, a lot of our self talk can be just remembering where we don't win. So that's great. That's great feedback. And I loved what you said about how you decided, like, what you're doing isn't going well. So continuing to do that seems kind of scary, could be viewed as scary. And so you're like, hey, let me try this other thing, because if it does go well, then I'm going to be in a much better place. And if it doesn't go well, then I'm right where I am now anyway.
Right?
Right.
It's really, you can't really lose.
Yeah. It's a great way to look at it. I think that, I don't know if you realized that before, but I think that that's a secret sauce to not only that move, but some other moves that I've seen you do since then. That's kind of like how you roll. You're like, hey, I'm going to try this, and it's either going to work and go great, or I'm going to get some feedback and make an adjustment.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people my story a lot. I didn't grow up real privileged, and so because of that, we had to be very resourceful. That's been a major theme throughout my life. And, a couple of years back, I maybe would have looked at that in a derogatory manner, like, oh, I had to be resourceful. But I've realized that it has allowed me to be a person who really is like big risk, big reward. Like, I'm really not afraid to make a risky decision anymore because I've been resourceful my whole life. There's always a solution out there, there's always a solve, and I can figure it out, and I have to keep telling myself that a lot. I do have to keep reminding myself of that. But, that resourcefulness you can turn into the thing that motivates you to take these big risks, because you've got that to fall back on.
Yeah. I think that's such a great takeaway. Such a great takeaway for the listeners, because I think, especially with social media, there's this tendency to see people who maybe have the silver spoon or have advantages that we don't have and say, well, I can't do as well because I don't have these advantages. And actually, I've seen that to be a detriment to people long term. I think short term, you can start to look like you're winning a lot, but life will give us adversity. We don't know how it's going to come, when, what it's going to look like. But the people who have all those starting advantages, they don't know how to deal with adversity when it comes up. They don't have that muscle memory or
Mm.
that skill because they didn't have to build it. So a lot of times people who don't have the advantages maybe looks like they're starting slower, but over time when life happens and there's divorce, there's, bankruptcies, foreclosure, whatever the health issues, whatever the life events that come up, they don't have that mental strength that, right? I mean,
Right.
that's a big takeaway for the listeners. Anybody feeling discouraged or like you don't have the advantages or anything, I think your story is a testament that those things could also be a detriment, and your struggle or whatever you want to call it is actually the thing that is setting you up, even though maybe it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah,
I,
you just got to use it for what you got to use it instead of letting it like use you, you know? And just fuel it and funnel it into what you want.
how did you how did you come to be able to shift your thinking in that way to from like, man, I'm in a bad spot or I got dealt these cards that stink to, hey, I'm gonna take some shots and figure this out. How did you have mentors? Was it books? Was it how did you
It's a good question. I don't know that I can trace it back to any point in time. I will say that when I started at my last career, I was still young enough that I told you, I grew up a certain way. Excuse me, and I was I was so nervous at orientation. There's a room full of very nicely dressed people. I feel like maybe I'd got my outfit that day at like the Goodwill or something, and I felt a little bit like an imposter.
right.
Um, and I remember my first couple of days during orientation, like I'd be in a crowd of people and I'd be talking, and I would say things that I could tell were not things you're supposed to say in public, like by the looks on people's faces and their body language changes. And it was like that was when it kind of hit me that like, hey, I don't know that I know the narratives I need to know to succeed in life. Like I don't know that I have the right skills. Um, and I was like, okay, well, like this is the turning point for me. This is when things need to start changing. And they did. And I don't know if it was, I mean, maybe it was some of it was books, some of it was mentors, people from church. But I think a lot of it was just surrounding myself by different types of people. The place I worked, there were people from all different walks of life. And even though I didn't really understand what I was doing, saying like why it wasn't fitting in, I just kind of started watching these other people and started saying like, hey, I like the way they present themselves. Let me mimic that until it feels natural.
Yeah.
I like the way that this person smiles, and says hi to people walking down the hall. I'm going to do that. And they were little simple things, but I feel like it taught me how to kind of fit in with the world around me a little bit better. And I feel like that was a big accomplishment for me. A lot of the people that came from the town I came from, or even some of my friends from when I was young, you know, they struggled to snap out of that. And just kind of snapping out of that where I was to where I want to be and shifting like who I am as a person and how I present myself, I think was kind of a catalyst for me believing like I can do anything, not to be, I don't want to sound egotistical. Obviously I can't like fly a jet or something, but it gave me confidence to say like, if I can rise above that situation, and I can be a little better, and I can fit in with these different types of people, and I can socialize no more awkwardly than I used to, then surely I can do this next thing. And then that next thing would pop up, and I would remind myself of the last thing, and I would take on the next thing. And when that worked out, then it just adds to that bucket of like, the next time I think about the last two things I did, and they just kind of pile up until you have some confidence.
So you stacked some wins. You took
Yeah, yeah,
stacked some wins, and that helped you get the courage to do it again the next
yeah,
time.
yeah.
So, okay, so you change careers, you go do a marketing thing. They say your marketing stinks. You get licensed, you start doing loans. The funny thing, not funny, but interesting to me is that, so for listeners who maybe don't know, the type of mortgage work that we do is have always said it's two jobs. It's getting loans, which is marketing, and doing loans, which is much more technical skill of like income analysis, credit analysis, program shopping, all that stuff, structuring the loan to make it work. And so your first kind of like venture into the mortgage space was the first part of that job, the getting loans. And they said it stinks. Fast forward, you start getting a lot of loans. So like, do you want to talk about, how you did that, what you did for marketing, because it was maybe different than what they were asking you to do? Or was their assessment of what you were doing incorrect and you used the same stuff and it worked? Or how did that roll?
Yeah, I mean, so I think I was going to say traditionally, but I don't think that's fair. Where I started, the way to get loans was to go out, attend parties, events, cocktail hours, cigar socials, and you shake hands and hang out and befriend other industry professionals. And then you ask those people to send their clients to you, and you have to maintain these relationships in that regard.
Which is
But
real
like
in most cases, right?
most
So
of the time, it's realtors. Yeah.
loan officers going out, doing happy hours and cigar things with real estate agents to try to win their
Hmm.
referrals.
Yeah. And, sometimes there's title and insurance and lawyers and CPAs and people that are just kind of adjacent to a person who may want to buy a house or need to buy a house. Um, However, I had three kids at home by myself. Number one, I could not do a lot of these things. I can't go out for a cocktail hour, from 5 to 7. And then, I mean, what am I supposed to do with my kids while I do this thing? And it was just too much. But on top of that, I was terrible at it. Like I don't, I don't do very well with like those like mid-tier relationships. You've got your outer bubble, it's like superficial relationships, the middle one where it's like, yeah, we're friends, but I won't tell you about my baby mama drama. And then you've got your inner circle. Like I can only really do that inner circle or that super outer circle. And so I either always overshare or I sit grumpy in the corner like a pariah, and then can't talk to anybody. So I really struggled in these situations, and watching all of these women at this office succeed in it. Once again, those thoughts of like, I can't do this. I'm an imposter. How am I going to get business kind of started to come back up. I think I have been my biggest, deterrent to success, throughout my entire career. It's not been the market or getting business. It's just really how I think and talk about myself. And so I had to stop myself and say like, no, that's not the only way to get business. We can do this a different way. And so
How
I
did
started
you
really,
come to that conclusion initially? Did you see someone else doing different things, or did you just think to yourself, how could I? Like, how did you arrive at that place where you're like, I don't have to do what they're doing?
well, I honestly, I think that it was just probably a happy accident. I think that I was just resistant to doing what they were doing. And I said, I have to find a different solution. Like, I just have to. That's not going to work. Um, I had engaged a ton in some social media groups where I just feel like I was just part of the community there, you know? So I started kind of advertising online on social media. That's easy. I can do that while also feeding my baby, you know? Um, I started doing other things too that didn't require me to be outside of business hours. Like I found a lot of people who were also young into real estate. And I said, hey, you know, one thing I've noticed as a new loan officer is that there's not a lot of training for us. We're out here just hoping we make it. I bet it's like that for you too. Can we maybe get
These are like
together and let's,
business realtors.
yes, yes, yeah, new to the business. And I'm like, maybe we can get together and teach each other things about each of our sides of the business. That will help both of us. And I just I tried to find ways that I could contribute, that I could provide real value to people without having to like court people. You know, I didn't want to have to court realtors and court title companies and court insurance agents. I wanted to actually provide something valuable. That way that I didn't have to feel like I was like begging people to do business, or I didn't have to make people, I didn't want people to do business with me because of my personality or because I will go to a party with them. I wanted them to do business with me because I offered something of value.
Hmm. I love that. I love that. That is that is a beautiful thing, and it kind of takes the pressure off, right?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you don't even have to ask. I mean, I guess you should. That's like a good sales technique is to ask for business. But, you know, you don't really have to ask, like, hey, would you mind sending me a client here and there? Because you have something to offer their clients. It's a no-brainer at that point.
Yeah. And as you were explaining that, two things that popped out to me with that was the authenticity that you had in doing that. You thought, hey, here's a skill that I had from my prior career training. That how could I use that skill that I have, ignoring what like Sally and Stacy and whoever are doing, right? And saying like, what can I contribute? You start doing that. Um, and so, and you did it in a humble way, I feel. And it was authentic. And man, the results from that. Do you want to talk about that journey? Because you went from new to the business to in our branch doing the most units of anyone with some seasoned people in a hard market. So something else you said there was um, that you were. It wasn't the market. It was you. Um, and when you made those shifts, it was like off to the races, you know, high interest rates, who cares? The market, who cares? And it was from a place of humility and authenticity and offering real value. So tell us about the journey from your first loan to like that first year where you beat everyone in our branch for the most units. Talk about that journey and how that felt too to get there.
Yeah. Well, my first 6 months licensed was with another company. It was with the first company I started with. And I felt like I did okay, you know. I don't remember, but I had a handful of deals. I'd done a couple of $1 million in in production in my first few months. I don't
For
know how.
context, more than a lot of people do. For anyone listening that maybe doesn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, it was enough that people were like, dang, okay, cool. Like maybe you're going to be good at this, you know? And so that was a confidence booster just because people were shocked that I was doing deals. But
You're like, I don't know
I
if I should be
didn't,
offended or shocked.
I know, right? I know. I didn't like though that like every time somebody would call me, they'd be like, hey, I need to talk to you about mortgages. And I had no idea at this point, like what I was really doing. I just knew I wanted to help them. So I
Right.
would be like, okay, tell me everything. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to call you back because I wanted to make sure I got them real information. But man, I was just fumbling through every one of them at first. And so it came time that branch was dissolving and it came time to kind of decide where I was going to work for the future, you know? And that's where I came upon you in Fairway. And I really liked the training that they offered here. Once again, it's just what I am, you know, lifelong educator in my previous career and stuff. And so I liked all of the training that was available because I feel like, once again, if you can add value, if you can be a subject matter expert, if you know how to solve problems, there's never going to be a shortage of business because the world is filled with people with problems that need solutions. I would beg to say that 9 out of 10 people would buy a house that are first time home buyers would go ahead and buy a house today if there was solutions to all of their problems. You know, so that's
100%.
like I try to look at myself like we're not salespeople in this industry, like we are problem fixers. Um, so that kind of, I think that the transition to Fairway was really what propelled me forward because then I had all these tools at my disposal and I just started learning and applying, learning and teaching other realtors. I kept doing that because it's what I love to do, but also
Yes.
the more they know, the more people they can also help, you know? And that will eventually funnel back to me somehow. Hopefully. If it doesn't, oh well, they still helped people, right?
Hmm.
So, um, and it was good. You know, the first full year at Fairway, I had a good year. Uh, and I remember goal setting that next, maybe January probably, but I remember goal setting. And I specifically remember you talking about increasing my goal, like I've 10%, 15%, whatever it might have been. And I remember thinking, yeah, right. I'm going to do like half of what I did last year. That was a fluke. And it like every single year that I've goal set, I've wrote a number lower than the year before and then had to like, okay, Melanie, you're being ridiculous. 3 years in a row, 4 years in a row is not a fluke. Yeah, you know, and I had to like challenge that imposter syndrome and then say, okay, erase that number, let's add 10 to it, you know, and put it back up where it needs to be.
Yeah, that's so many people struggle with that. I am guilty as well with the imposter syndrome. So that's a good
Yeah.
reminder that we all struggle with that. And something else that I want to just point out for the listeners and the viewers is that your your heart in there. A lot of times, people, whether it's mortgage people or other entrepreneurs, they're looking for like what's the hack, what's the script, what's
Mm.
which there's some place for that, but I think there's no substitute for the theme that I've heard from you, which is um, you can't for any duration fake being like a caring and good person. Like that just has to be in your DNA. So like when you take a caring and genuine and kind person who really wants to help people because they like want to help people, not because they're trying to make a sale or be popular. It's just who they are. If you take that person and you give them some tools and some support, then man, like they can do some great things. And that's what I've seen from you is just um, you care about people, and that comes through like with everything you do. And I suspect the realtors you speak to, the clients that you speak to, they feel that. And fortunately and unfortunately, I don't know if we can bottle that for the future here. Like I think you just have to, so there's some self work maybe to like if you're not there to get to that place, right? I think
I
that
think that I think that people are afraid that like if they care too much about other people, it doesn't leave enough room for their own success. Right? Like I have to be selfish and I have to be a little greedy and I have to take as much as I can to be successful.
Hmm.
And if you give half of yourself to others, then that's half less you have for yourself. But I mean, there are multiple ways to achieve what you want to achieve. I think about like a toddler too, like throwing a temper tantrum. Like you could come in, you know, big and strong and bullheaded, and you can, you know, try to force that toddler to quit crying and stand up and do what you're told, and you may eventually get there, you know. You could also come in and you could gently ask what's going on. You could give them a hug until they quit crying, then tell them to stand up, and like and then you'll also get to the same place you could the other route, right? Like there are multiple ways to end up at the same solution, and if you can get to that same spot that you want to be at while also helping hundreds of people, 10 people, one person along the way, like, isn't that a better outcome?
I think so.
I hope that most people think so. I think that most people would think so.
I agree. I think the bummer thing is I think a lot of people don't realize that they're doing what you said is like giving half and like thinking about themselves. A lot of old school sales training is like how do you craft a sentence or a conversation to get the result that you want versus how do I have enough curiosity to learn about this
Mm,
person to see if we actually even have a solution for them genuinely. you know
yeah,
that's a completely different energy, and I've been on the other side of both of those, as I'm sure you have.
yeah,
And I think being on the other side, just thinking out loud right now, being on the other side of like the bad side of that conversation where you could tell the person just trying to get something from you
yeah,
has been an extreme motivator for me because of how bad that felt for me. Just remembering some of those interactions early on, um, and interacting with people who weren't acting in humility, you know, um, has really motivated me to give the world the opposite of that. And I see that a lot in you and in the way that you interact with people. And I think if you bottled like what your secret sauce was, definitely there's some discipline, some tactics. Um, you mentioned social media, specifically doing trainings. So I mean, there's definitely some tactics, right? But I think that none of that works without the X factor of humility, genuineness, and just really trying to help people. I would say. I don't know
yeah.
if you
I mean,
agree with
I think
that.
that's kind
I'm
of
trying
the core. Yeah, I think that's my. If you had to say what are your core values, you just kind of hit the nail on the head there.
Hmm. So, someone listening to this, what advice would you give them if they're struggling with imposter syndrome, if they're feeling like, they're down on their luck, they're maybe about to be divorced, newly divorced, just starting a new career, struggling with that self doubt, that feeling of hopelessness? Um, what advice or encouragement would you give someone that's sitting there right now today, um, in some of those places that you've been?
Yeah. Well, I think that I would probably tell them that like I am not special. I don't have like I didn't have a perfect ACT score. I didn't have a perfect life. I've had adversity. I've had just so much of it actually. And yet like I'm still here and I got through it, and that means that you can also get through it, right? Like we don't have to be some champion superstar to get through these things. We have to make lists. Remind yourself of all the things you have made it through, you know? But then also start giving yourself some grace. I think when we look back at some of the things that have happened to us or that we've done, decisions we made, and we start letting that self confidence come down because we're saying things to ourselves like, man, had I only XYZ. If I hadn't have done this, then this wouldn't have happened, right? But I think instead switching that narrative to, I did the best with the tools I had available. I did the best with the knowledge I had at the time. And rewriting the way you're talking about yourself in your past, right? I think just in general, that's going to increase your confidence. And be kind like that to yourself. But eventually, you just have to do it. You cannot, you can sit there where you're at now, down on your luck, feeling sad, feeling hopeless, and you can stay there and things are going to continue to just kind of suck. And that's a choice. Or you can try something different in the hopes that you're going to get a better life out of it, or you're going to get that thing you want, or you're going to be the parent you want, or the career person you want, whatever. All it takes is a choice. Just get up and do something. Even on the hard days, one little step towards it. Because when that one little step, when you take it and something positive comes out of it, you add that back to your list. You add that back to the list of, hey, I didn't feel like getting out of bed today, but I did. And I went outside and I checked the mail. And when I did that, the postman was there and we talked for a minute and he told me about a job opening that they have down there. I'm going to go apply tomorrow. One little decision could be the start of everything else. You just got to keep getting up and doing it.
I love that. The CEO of Fairway often says this phrase, keep playing.
Mm,
And he was a college basketball player, and he's told a lot of stories about sports, which I always enjoy. Just because sports, like life, has a lot of adversity and your losses can be very public, and you have to make a choice. Do you sulk and quit and walk away, or do you quote unquote keep playing? Like what you said,
mm-hmm.
you're one decision away from a totally different life. And
Yeah,
that can be easy to forget,
it can be. It can be.
you know?
But you also get to bask in the rewards when it comes through. You know, you got to remember, I think, if you've had a couple of hard days, it's hard to remember that feeling like when something really comes through for you, that excitement that's just deep inside you. It's hard to remember that sometimes, but you got to hold on to that. So when you're feeling bad, think back to one of those moments and let it, I mean, really not just think on it, like feel that moment and remind yourself, hey, that's that feeling I'm searching for again.
Mm, I like that. So, um, hang on to those moments, journal them,
Mm-hmm.
burn them into your mind so you can go back and imagine how it feels in those moments to give you that encouragement forward,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, there's a quote from, I think it's Zig Ziglar, that says, if you help enough other people get what they want, you can have anything you want.
Yep.
Um, which maybe sounds like manipulative, but if you come at it from a genuine heart, I think that's a key. That's a key that I've seen to your success, um, whether it was intentional or not. I feel like that's come through in the heart of everything you've shared on this episode and just what I've seen in your life. So, um, if there's a loan officer out there specifically who is struggling in this market, um, for whatever reason, is there any different advice that you would give them on top of what you just mentioned about refocusing and feeling what it feels to win? Are there
Mm.
any mortgage LO specific, loan officer specific things that you would say that you would give as advice?
Yeah. There are multiple ways to skin a cat. Just like my early career, like I was watching all these people do things that I couldn't do, trying to mimic them, knowing I wasn't going to be able to. Like, stop that for sure. Find what you love to do and how it ties into your business and do that. I'm not saying disregard all the basics, right? Like they're there for a reason.
100%.
Don't reinvent the wheel. All of that, sure. But it's not going to work if you're getting up every day and you're doing 10, you know, disingenuous activities every
Come
day
on.
that you just hate doing, you're struggling through it. People are going to know and they're going to tell, they can tell. And that's not going to attract things to you. Get up every day, pick a handful of things that you love doing that ties into the mortgage business and do those things and watch the natural rewards from that kind of come in. Um, Also, I hear so many loan officers talking about um, the market and rates and the scarcity mindset, the
Mhm.
scarcity mindset that's out there. And this might be a little too honest, but like, get over yourself already. Like, there's so much business out there. People are buying and selling houses every day, all day. I know it's been a hard couple of years in comparison to the few years before that, but this hasn't been the hardest couple of years ever. And even if this was hard for rates, other years were hard for other reasons, right? Something will
Thousand
always be
percent.
hard. Stop complaining. We have the best job in the entire world.
Mm.
and and I think that just reminding yourself of that, like, if you're in this job and you can't wake up every day and be like, holy cow, I'm a loan officer, you probably should find a different job because we have a great job, and if you can't find that passion again, then maybe it's just not the place.
Yeah, you're right. That reminds me of many of the listeners might have heard something called the reticular activating system, right? Where it's like if you buy a Jeep, all of a sudden you see Jeeps everywhere you go.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, your mind finds what you look for, you know? So, like, if you're looking for stress and problems, you're going to see it everywhere. If you're looking for people to help, opportunity, the bright side, you're going to see it everywhere. And so it's like
Mm-hmm.
most people want the feeling that they get from the second list of things that I said there, but but then a lot of times they'll speak things that's like the negative, the scarcity, and then expect to find all this beautiful stuff. So that's something that I think is wise to be intentional about because you're right. I mean, 2020 and 2021, when people were making record money, there was people complaining about being tired and busy. And even though the money was great, and now there's people complaining about the flip side. Oh, there's not enough. And meanwhile, there's people like you that are crushing and having their best year. So it's like, what are you looking for? What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Where's your mindset? These are all um, not random accidents. I feel like that's like the course that you're setting for your life is a lot to do with what you say out loud and what you allow yourself to continually think about. Sometimes we can't control a thought that pops in our head, but we can either hold on to it or let it go and pick another
Mm-hmm.
one. Um,
These are also skills, just to point out, that you didn't have to go to college to get.
mm,
You don't have to be super intelligent. You don't have to read 100 books this year to get them. Like, you don't have to be special to control the things that you think, to control the things that come out of your mouth. These are skills that literally any single person can do.
that is a fabulous point. That is a fabulous point. I don't disagree with that whatsoever. One, a couple closing questions here, which we didn't pre-game this, so please be transparent.
Oh.
Don't be nervous. If a loan officer out there is considering, because you mentioned you started at another company and you're now here at Fairway, if a loan officer is considering, if they're starting to get the awareness of like, hey, maybe where I'm at isn't where I need to be,
Hmm.
what are some things that you would recommend that a loan officer look for when they're choosing another company? I ask that because we get a lot of recruiting in this industry, and a lot of the recruiting leads with offers of money and golden streets, and they say a lot of things. So how can a loan officer, what are some things that you would recommend that a loan officer look for, qualities, systems, people, um, name some top things. Feel free to like think out loud and brainstorm while we're talking here.
Yeah.
Um, What do you think?
Well, I think first of all, before you switch companies, right, you need to look inside and own up to the things that you contributed that
Mm.
made your time there not work out, right? That way you don't repeat it at the next
So you're going to
place.
bring yourself to the next place too.
Yes, you
I
are.
love that advice.
Then
That's
I
great
think you should.
relationship advice and career. Not to get totally
uh,
off the rails, but
Yeah. But then I think that it's important to ask yourself, like what type of business do I do? Who are my clients? What are their needs? Make sure, of course, that you find a company that those things fit with. In today's mortgage world, you know, that shouldn't be a hard thing to get a list of my top 5 places pretty quickly, right? Um, the other thing though is like don't chase the money is what I would say for sure. Like yeah, you may get paid twice as much per file that you close. But if you can only close a fourth of your files because their processing, underwriting, closing departments aren't up to par, then you've made less money, So I would not chase the money like that. How much money you make is not determined by the company you work at. It's determined by how many loans you go get and close, right? How many relationships you build, how many families you help. That's a you thing. That's not a your company thing. So, and then I would look for support. I mean, I could never close the number of loans I did this month without my processor. She is an angel, and I'm not going
agree.
to say her name because somebody might try to take her from me. Uh, she's on lockdown. Um, but no, she's wonderful. She does so much for me, and I don't have to stress out and worry about like what she's saying to my clients or the tone
Mm.
of her emails or is she on top of dates. She doesn't miss a thing ever. Same thing with our closing department. Everyone knows what they're doing, when they're doing it, and how to do it. Underwriting times. We live in a very, very fast paced world. If you have to submit something to your underwriting team and tell your client, hey, I'll let you know if you're approved in 6 days, well, that might be a problem for your client because they can get a loan closed or almost, in that same time frame
Yeah, yeah,
sometimes,
yeah.
like, so I would really, really, really heavily look at support staff. And I wouldn't look at that through the lens of your recruiter, right? I would look at that through the lens of other loan officers that work there, no, reviews, client reviews for the company as a whole, and even other loan officers in your branch that you're going to join, right? If you're joining a branch and all the loan officers there have these horrible 1 and 2 star reviews, there might be a whole structural problem with that branch, right?
Mm.
Um, and then of course, like the training, I can't harp on that enough. It is irresponsible to be a loan officer and be advising clients and not I don't even call them clients. These are people. These are human beings with families. And it's irresponsible to be advising them on how and when and why to take this big step in their life and not know what you're talking about. So having things like knowledge bases and training classes, support staff that you can call that's been doing these intricate processes for 30 years,
Yeah,
having all those things at your fingertips so that you can make sure you're actually helping people is also a must.
I love that. So you're going to try to reach other people besides the recruiter, people who actually work in the branch that you're thinking of going to, see how
Mm-hmm.
their reviews are, which you could easily do online. Um, but I think talking to them, if they will talk to you or you can reach out to them, is a 10 out of 10. I wish I would
Mm-hmm.
have done that. I had a conversation yesterday with someone and I was like, I wish I would have done that sooner in my career because I probably wouldn't have gone to some places if I would have done that. That's the wisest advice. And another addition to that, I would say, is if you can call people completely unrelated to that branch at the company, like in other parts of the country, even, and get some data points there to see, like, hey, do you like it here? Do you like it here? Um, that could give you a better feel for what you're really going to get versus what the recruiter's telling you, right? 'Cause
Yes.
I've never had a recruiter call me and say, we're kind of slow. we don't, we kind of stink at this. Like, I've never heard that from a recruiter ever. uh, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they tend to not say that. So, um, and then training and support, um, which again, a lot of places say they have. So, how would you, do you have anything like as far as what type of training, um, what type of support? What are some specific things that have been the most helpful to you?
Yeah, I mean, I would ask specifically, like, hey, could you show me your training calendar next month? Like for all your live and in person or over, Zoom trainings with a real human, can you show me a calendar of that for next month? And let's see if they even do any of that. Because I mean, they could have a database of pre-recorded trainings all day long. And those are great. And that's definitely a starting point. But you need to be able to speak to a real human because what we're doing are files for real complex humans and not everything's going to fit in that box, so you need to be able to train and ask questions. I think asking your recruiter, cool, if y'all do training, send me the list of what you're doing next month. Asking specifically, do you have a knowledge base that has AI capabilities? That's been something that when Fairway rolled that out, that was game changing for me because I mean, the guideline book, if you printed them all out, it's probably that thick, right? Like it's insane. Insane.
Seems like it's changing all the time, right?
Yes, yes. And you can't memorize all that. So and it would be irresponsible to try anyway, because they are changing all the time. So, you can pop in there and say, hey, uh, you know, I don't know. We call her Gigi, but can you take me to this page and teach me about X, Y, Z? Or can you refresh me on the guideline around this question? And it will kind of help navigate through those guidelines for you. So having technology also to kind of pair with some of these things is helpful too. And I would ask for proof of these things. If somebody gets offended that you're asking them to show you, if your recruiter gets mad because you want like, hey, show me, don't tell me, it's probably a bad sign right at the get-go.
Mhm. Love that. Uh, Another similar question is if a recruiter called you today and made you like the world's best offer, what are one or two reasons why you would think to yourself, I couldn't imagine leaving Fairway because blah blah blah, fill in the blank.
Yeah, this happens all the time actually. And I just laugh because like I couldn't. Like I said, I love all of my support team so much so I know that the brand that I put into the world, they also believe that same thing in their hearts, right? So my clients are getting the same experience from me as they are from every other person they speak to in this process on the Fairway side. And I would not ever risk leaving that. And then the same thing, but as Fairway as a whole. Like the it's not just my processor and closer and managers and teammates who have the same like heart for people, like our entire company does. Like I for as being as big as Fairway is, it's also personal and intimate and kind and compassionate and humble, and they give back to the community. They really do encompass the things that I find important in life in general. And I definitely want to do business the same way that I want to like live. If I want to be a kind, humble, compassionate human, I also want to do business that way. And Fairway does business that way. So I'm kind
Mm.
of stuck.
Yeah, I love that. That one of the last things you said. I um, have seen that over 9+ years, and to me, it's like I want to be able to treat people a certain way. And I know that like it's not my name under CEO. I don't have underwriting authority. So I have to rely on the corporate team sometimes to do X, Y, and Z and to have the confidence to know that they actually care the way that we do is you can't really put a price on that, you know?
Hmm.
Like what you said earlier about it's not just about the money. I mean, most decent sized mortgagees and probably a big distribution of companies pays within a tight range of comp. Um, but what sets you apart and what helps you grow are things like that. Like, how does the company really roll when the pressure's on? How quick do they jump in and solve things and help you? Those are things that I've experienced and I know you've experienced. And that's like, how could you imagine not having that? You know, it's like something that before you have it, you don't really get it. But once you experience it, it's like, how could you imagine not having that? You know, to me, it's like
Yeah. I mean,
something
I'll never forget the day that I was standing in line at an ice cream, maybe it was an ice cream shop or a fast food restaurant, but I mean, I'm like pajamas out in public, living my best life, and my phone rings. It's a weird number. And I'm like, I wonder who this is. I answer it. I was like, hello? Not even thinking it could be somebody important. And Steve Jacobson, our CEO, was like, "Hey, it's Steve," and I was like, "Oh no, I'm in trouble or something." It was shocking, but like I mean, there it is. He needed something or needed to tell me something, and instead of getting like an email from maybe like the CEO's ghostwriting assistant, like he picked up his cell phone and called me and said, "Hey, let's chit chat for a second." That's powerful. It's a testament for how we do business here, I think.
1,000%. I've never been anywhere where the CEO will just pick up and call like that. And like, it's crazy to think like I have his cell phone number. Like I can call him, text him, he'll take my call and he'll answer quick. It's like, it's insane. Like
It's really wild.
in a beautiful way, So, last question. We're coming
Okay.
up on about an hour here. So I appreciate you spending the time because I know you're busy. This is not so much a business question, but
Okay.
if you had to think about what you want your legacy to be in this world, what are some things that come to mind?
Well, man, you got me thinking about what I would do with like $1 billion now, but I'm gonna skirt away from those thoughts, right? But I think that if I get to my deathbed one day and I have raised beautifully souled children,
Right.
right, that are contributing to the world somehow, um, who continue to be kind and compassionate in the face of the ugliness that's out there, I'll call that a win. If I can keep doing what I'm doing, right, and I help. I mean, well, on average, hopefully, we'll do, 80 to 100, maybe a little more families a year that we will help get into homes. Um, if I do that for the next 30 years, and truly do this job with a sense of with it coming from the right place, right? Like if I keep doing that, I mean, think about how many people who their whole path could change, right? Like I mean, these are wealth building assets, and the easiest wealth building asset I feel like to invest in. I mean, it can be the difference for people in, where they started and where they want to be. If I can contribute, to that, I'll feel like I did something. If really, that's it. It's a hard question to answer. But I think what I want to try to say is that like you don't have to have that $1 billion. Like that's what my mind wanted me to think. Like if
Right.
I win the lottery, I could build houses for single moms who getting on their feet. Yeah, that'd be awesome, right? Or I could donate to my church who could donate to this, and that'd be awesome. But also you can go out and leave a legacy like every single day in your current job, in your current community, in your current household. Raise good children, raise kind humans, be kind to your neighbor, help somebody in your community. Like you may think you're doing something so silly by providing one meal, like that's not a big deal. But you know what? That might completely shift that day, that week, that month for that person. So I think that if I can just continue or do better at living, continue and do better, let's say that, living my life more in community, then that's a good enough legacy for me.
Absolutely love that. I think where you went is where a lot of people would go. They're like, oh, if I had $1 zillion, I would do X, Y, and Z. And something that I've seen is that, everybody has their lane and their role. Like some people can give $10 million to whatever, and that helps, right? Because like stuff costs, but also, um, to your point, not everyone can or will be able to do that, but everyone can, everyone who has children can make it a goal to raise kind, emotionally developed, healthy, functioning members of society. That has a massive impact. Uh,
Massive.
if you help 100 families a year for 30 years, that's thousands of people's lives you impact. You help them build wealth, start a legacy for their family. There's not too many things where you can invest in with little or no down and grow wealth that has
Mm-hmm.
potential tax advantages and can snowball into other investments. I mean, it's such a beautiful thing. Not only that, but the non-financial aspects of home ownership, the stability, being able to have a safe place to live and, grow up. And there's financial and non-financial reasons why it's beautiful to be able to own a home and not have to be displaced from a rental every 12 months or have to move further and further out of town as rents go up versus,
Mm-hmm.
your mortgage payment being pretty um, stable over a course of a very long period of time. So those are beautiful things, and I think things that a lot of people, most people, could do. And imagine if everyone did that, how different would the world be? Um, and so that's the spirit of one of the driving motivators why I wanted to have this podcast and have guests like you come on is to share more of those messages with the world to help encourage people and remind of what's really important. So thank you very much for doing
Yeah,
that. Thank you for being
absolutely.
on our show today. I really appreciate it. It's been amazing. Thank you for visiting today. Any final thoughts as we wrap up?
No, just thank you for taking the time to chat with me today.
Of course, was very grateful to have you, and I appreciate all the listeners and viewers for watching another episode of the Made to Be Great podcast. Have an awesome day.
You were made to be great. Don't settle for less. You were made to be